Welcome to Real Leaders with Roshini, the podcast with real talk, real questions, real insight, and we hope real inspiration. For real. We're at Capitol Grill in downtown Minneapolis, and my guest today is Alison Brown. She's the president and CEO of the Science Museum of Minnesota. Welcome, Alison.
Thank you, and thanks for having me here. It's so exciting to be downtown in the Capitol Grill. Beautiful setting.
Yeah, it's a great setting. We love it here, and they take good care of us. You know, you hear CEO, president of the Science Museum, so a lot of people might think you're a science type, but really you're a math type.
Yes.
You're a mathematician, a finance type. What drew you to that, first of all?
Well, I like to say I'm the M in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math. And when I was a little girl, I knew early on that I loved math, and I knew I wanted to go into business since I was about 11 years old. And I had an early experience with a math teacher who really helped inspire me to stay focused on math and to know that I could do it, even though then there were very few girls going into math, and that's still an issue for us in our society.
Isn't that really wonderful to hear, that it was a teacher that inspired you, that stayed with you, and that adult in your life really was game-changing?
Yes, and we know that there can be role models, not just teachers, but parents, aunts, uncles, a friend who can inspire youth to spark their passion for whatever it may be, but particularly we're focused on girls, youth of color, youth from low-income families to see themselves in those STEM careers, because they're underrepresented in those careers right now in our society.
And that's part of your mission at the Science Museum, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's really been our focus for probably since our founding 112 years ago, but it's really a focus right now for us.
Why do you think it is that, you know, here we are approaching 2020 and girls are still not necessarily drawn to science, math, and engineering? I mean, certainly there are some, but it is not the majority.
Yeah, there's a whole, if there were one thing, it'd be easy to fix, right? But there's a whole variety of issues that happen in our society. And early on, actually, girls learn that they're not scientists. So when they're first little and boys and girls are asked to draw a scientist, they equally draw boys and girls because they draw their own gender. And then by about age 7, they start predominantly drawing boys. So somewhere along the way, they learn through movies, through ads, through what they see as scientists, that it's for boys. So we need to change that in our society. We need to give them the role models like I had with my teacher. So they learn that girls can be scientists too.
So it's like really changing the predominant psyche.
Yeah, it is.
You know, all these images out there, that's a big challenge to take on. How do you want the Science Museum of Minnesota to be seen? Because you are doing things not only for the state of Minnesota, but really for museums all over.
We want to show that it takes everybody to help change that mindset. And actually, it's improving. So the Scientific America has done a study and shown that there's been progress. So we can change that mindset. Isn't that wonderful?
It's amazing. I mean,
it is.
And that's the thing, all these studies and you're actually putting them into play and you're seeing results.
We are seeing results, and we know that informal science settings like the Science Museum of Minnesota is a place where that change happens. And just yesterday, I had the privilege to speak to probably about 300 of our instructors who will teach youth at our summer camps. And it was a diverse group of teachers. So we have diversity in our teachers, in terms of their age, in terms of their ethnicity, and that matters because those are our role models. And studies also show that having a teacher of color is an important influence for sparking youth's passion for going into STEM careers.
Right, and I think it probably not only helps those students of color, but it helps non-students of color, white students, also see everyone can aspire to really any
Absolutely.
role.
It's a positive for everybody all around.
I also understand,
great?
It's great. I also
Yeah.
understand at the museum, you make it a habit of walking the floors, meeting with your customers, your visitors, meeting with staff. What are the lessons, so for other people out there, what are the lessons that you gain from doing that?
What I gain is watching our volunteers and our staff interacting with our visitors and seeing it from the visitor perspective, a customer perspective, because they know what they want. sometimes museums or businesses think they know what their customers want, and we need to listen to our customers, our visitors, our guests, our students, and see what works for them. Because the best museums are those that are permeable. It's not just we tell the community what they need, we need to listen to what they tell us they need, and that's when we're most successful.
All right, some of my deep research, Alison, has gleaned that your staff calls you quick-witted. Quick, I think that's good. Quick to admit a mistake, genuine, but also hard on yourself.
Okay.
Would you say your staff is right on with those comments?
I would probably say that's true. And I keep trying to say to them that the hardest thing with being a CEO is that people won't tell me the truth. I'm going to make mistakes. I have certainly made mistakes, and I will continue to make mistakes. And I need people to tell me when I do that, because sometimes we get our own bubble, our thought bubble, and I need them to tell me when I'm wrong and to push against me, because we know that those organizations that are the most diverse are the ones that produce the best results.
Yeah, but you know what? That's easier said than done, because a lot of employees, a lot of even your senior leaders might be afraid of retaliation.
That's true. And that's where I have to show them and build the trust with them. And it doesn't happen by just saying, oh, trust me, don't worry about it. It's really by my actions that I develop trust with them. And if I break that trust by doing something that creates a barrier for them, it takes a long time to rebuild that trust.
I was surprised to learn that every job you've gone into, you've thought, oh, they made a mistake.
Yeah.
They made a mistake in what, Alison?
Well, they made a mistake in hiring me. And I'm going to
Seriously?
go. Oh, absolutely. Every time I've sat down in my office or in my chair, and I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to figure out I can't do this. And so what I do is I get up, and as you commented, I walk around the museum floor. I go walk around, I meet people, I develop relationships. So I learn about the organization, and I learn more about it so that I can actually perform my job. I can't do it alone. I keep going into organizations, and I have to learn what they do. I have to learn how they work. I have to learn who I can work with. Otherwise, I can't be successful. But I do every time. I truly have every time gone in and thought to myself, how am I going to make this work? How will I be successful?
Okay, so I have to push back a little on that comment.
Free.
So for someone I'm an executive coach, and I have a line, own your wow.
Oh, that's
and
great.
So I'm pushing back a little, because you as a female leader, I live for the day where we don't have to put female leader or women in front of that. We can just call people leaders. You in the roles, and you've been in some big roles in different parts of the country, for you to go into the president and CEO position of the Science Museum of Minnesota and still think they made a mistake. Someone hears that or sees that quote, and I think that could be a little defeating to a lot of women, because they look at you and think, wow, she's amazing.
I see it as empowering, because one of the problems with women is they always think I can't do it until I've already done it.
Got it.
So I'm saying I went in being a little afraid, but I still took that leap, and I did it. So every job I took the leap, I stretched myself. So I was not a CEO before I became the CEO of the Science Museum of Minnesota. I interviewed with that search committee. They saw what they wanted for the Science Museum of Minnesota, and they believed that I could do the job excellently. And so then I had to believe in myself and take that leap.
I like it. So what you're explaining to me is you have a little different process in owning your wow.
Yeah.
Little different process, but I like it. I like hearing about
because
that.
Otherwise, women always think they have to have known everything to move on to the next position, but you don't. You can find your mentors who will help you along the way. You will gain experience along the way, and that's okay to not have done it before.
I like it. And the other thing is you believe in listening, and your walking tours indicate that, but you've also said you should be the last one to speak. What does that mean? Because
sometimes I'm not. So I have to hold myself back in meetings, because I have the power, right? I'm the president and CEO of the Science Museum. So if I speak first, then I have already laid out what my expectations are or my thinking is around a topic or a conversation.
So it could shut down certain ideas.
Absolutely. And then the others feel that they don't have a voice in the room.
All right.
So I really have to be careful. I also have to be careful that I don't take over somebody else's ideas and make it my own.
Who are some leaders on the national or the global landscape that you're really impressed with?
Oh, there are a number of them. One of my favorite is Ed Catmull, who was one of the co-leaders of Pixar. And he wrote my favorite business book, Creativity, Inc. And so how do you run a highly creative organization, but also put processes in place? So how do you take creative people, which sometimes is like herding cats, and end up with such successful process as we have with the Pixar movies? And then how do you look at them? And he has these great processes in there. And then actually look at these successful products and then critique them and say, how are we going to make them better each time?
So always pushing ahead.
Always pushing, but
Improving.
always looking back to improve the future. So one of my favorite movies are the Toy Story series. I love all of them.
And there's another one coming out.
Yeah, and each one gets better, right? And usually with a series, the next one is not as good as the first. But each of the Toy Story series was a little different and a little bit better in a different way.
And the team is learning
Right.
and pushing itself.
And they're pushing against each other in a way that's not destructive but constructive.
All right. So it's good to know that you also have some relaxation phases or you allow that in your life. And one of that is your hobby of making handcrafted jewelry.
Yes, which I love doing.
Tell people about that.
So I got started in this maybe about 8 years ago when I went to make a present for a friend who was leaving where I worked. She's a very close friend, and she got a great new job. And there's a jeweler that she loved, and I created something similar to that jeweler but different. And that was the beginning of the end, and I got into doing fine beadwork. And in fact, the necklace I'm wearing now is something that I created. And what I love working with are very tiny, tiny, tiny antique beads that used to be woven in women's clothing 100 years ago.
Wow.
And then I've kind of expanded beyond that. And I like finding unusual pieces that I then incorporate into my work, such as this piece. I have no idea what it is. And I just found it in a store in San Francisco where I used to live. And then I designed the piece around it with black diamonds and other pieces. And I just loved something that's kind of unusual, creative.
And has a story.
And has a story behind it.
Right.
So that's really what. Also, I don't sell anything, but I like to make pieces for friends and families where they give me something that has a memory for them and then I can design around it for them.
Alison, if there were a song that is maybe the anthem of your life, what would it be?
Well, I hadn't thought about it ahead of time, so it just pops into my head, I Can Survive.
All right.
So when I was 11 years old, I read an article telling me that women should not go into business. So this is 1969. I sat my dad down, who was an entrepreneur, and I said, Dad, I'm going to go into business no matter what. And he said, in 1969 speak, you go, girl. And I did, and you cannot stop me from 1969 till now. So
I love it. It is fun to hear from some women leaders that I talk with that their father has played a really significant role.
He really did. Once he said that, I was off and running from 11 years so that's 50 years. I'm 61 years old and proud of it.
What's your advice to dads out there today? Dads of both boys and girls, but
Yeah.
dads.
They play an important role in the kids' lives, and they should not underestimate that they play. Their words matter. Those words, my dad, well, he's passed away, but I'm sure he doesn't even remember that conversation. But that had a powerful effect on me. So words really matter, and fathers and mothers really have an impact on a kid's life. And actually, so do aunts and uncles. And that's underestimated in our society, I think.
What's the quirkiest thing about Alison Brown that maybe not even your closest friends or staff would guess?
Oh, well, they know I love skiing. I think they know that, but I've skied 1,000,000 miles helicopter skiing.
Really?
Because my dad was an obsessive skier. And so he took me skiing with him up to Canada many times when he was a skier.
So when you say helicopter skiing, are you jumping out of a helicopter?
You don't jump.
Okay.
But they take you up in a helicopter up into uncharted. Well, they know about it, but you know,
Okay.
there's no ski slopes or anything. They take you up, they land the helicopter, you get out with a guide, and then you ski down. I haven't done it since for 30 years, because the last time I did it, I was pregnant with our oldest.
But you've done
son.
1 million miles?
Yeah. Vertical
Wow.
miles.
Would you do it again?
Oh, well, I debate about it. I'd have to exercise a lot. to
Maybe
get in
when you
great
turn
shape.
65.
Maybe 65. That'd be a good goal.
That's a good goal. You
Yeah,
got a
so
few
it'd be
years.
a lot of fun.
Yeah. Alison Brown,
still
such
ski.
a pleasure chatting
Thank
with
you.
you.
It was so much
Thanks
fun.
for dropping in and spending some time with us.
Thank you for having me here, and it's a beautiful setting and getting to know you even better.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Until next time, keep it real.